conversation, part of Network and Navigation, our Network and Navigating Summit. I hope everybody got a chance to take a look at our exhibitors. Um, we have a couple of different, well, we have Suzanne, you're just like a feature, you're one of our feature presenters today. We got to see a
Oh my
lot of
gosh.
Suzanne. She's one of our sponsors. Thank you again, Suzanne,
Of course.
long-term specialist. We have Jamie Roberts, who from the founder of the Health Project, and Arizona Leading Age, CEO of Arizona Leading Age. Thank you, Jamie, who introduced us to Suzanne. And we
Yes.
have Jennifer Love from Live Well Collective. And we had an opportunity, obviously, to all speak together. So I'm really excited about this conversation. I think people are going to get a lot of nuggets out of this conversation about how to talk about long-term planning, and also talk about people when they haven't done the planning and why we should long-term plan. There's lots of nuggets for yourself, family members, clients, and just people in our network. So we kind of want to open it up with, why do intelligent, capable people still avoid planning for care? We all know what's going to happen, right? Nobody's getting out of here alive, right? Right. But for some reason we don't want to plan. So I think I want to kind of kick it off because Jamie, and talk about a little bit about, your experience. You can, of course, leading age, but really why you created the Hell Project, and talk a little bit about, sometimes when people do not plan, they hit a crisis. So can we get into it? So what does it actually look like when someone didn't plan and now needs care, and the family's coming to you, and
Great.
you're meeting them at that point of collision?
Well, first of all, hello everyone. Well, I'm so excited to be here with all of you and with
Oh,
Suzanne and Jennifer.
yeah, I'm
Um,
sorry, I didn't get a chance
yeah,
to anybody to introduce. I'm going fast. I'm
that's
getting
okay. That's
that's
okay. There's lots.
Mark
There's
Myman channeling me with all the caffeine he's on. He goes so fast. So I'm sorry. Please give yourself an opportunity
no.
to introduce
Well,
yourself.
I'm
No.
I'm grateful to be here. No, it's fine, and I know we have a short period of time, and there's three of us, so I'll just start with kind of the genesis behind the Help Project. Was I have been working in senior living my entire career, whether it was as an operator, provider, or doing policy work like I do today. And I would be getting calls from family and friends constantly who were all capable, smart, had plenty of resources about I don't even know what to do here. Why is this so hard to navigate things for my parents or my loved one or whatever the case may be? So from that, the Help Project was born. But the Help Project has really transitioned a bit from doing direct family care issues to speak to the point is that people would often come to me or all the time, actually only in
Mhm.
crisis, which is why I've actually shifted to doing more corporate solutions because people don't know they're in crisis until it's almost too late. Somebody used a reference once with me that it's like boiling a frog.
Mhm.
You don't know until it's too late. So really, it's kind of teaching people the signs of things when they start showing up that they kind of just tick off as like, I'm just doing these little things. Maybe it's just putting the medications together for mom or driving them to this appointment and that appointment, or maybe it was just a fall. Those are all early indicators that
Mhm.
something is happening and your life is about to change. And so I think, it's not, none of this is rocket science, right? There's all of these things. It's just we as humans are a little bit in denial about aging, whether we and the frustration that it brings to you when that happens. And it's there's a lot of things that are unfolded, and Jennifer will speak to that probably on a much deeper level than I can. But I mean, that's what I see from people is that they come to you in a crisis, and every solution that we have in that moment would be different. We would have had a different solution if they would have planned earlier. And so I just would and Suzanne is absolutely the expert to kind of talk about what some of that early initial
Yeah.
planning can do and how that can transition someone's decision making instead of waiting for the crisis to happen.
Well, I think Suzanne's perspective, Suzanne, you want to introduce yourself again and kind of talking about the pre-planning part of it and the cost, and then we'll engage Jennifer, and Jennifer can introduce it. But please
Great.
give your background again, Suzanne. Sorry
Oh,
about that.
sure. So I'm Suzanne Shear. I was an only child and
I went through the sandwich generation very young. I was 33. I had a 15-month-old. My mom fell and broke her hip, and then that necessitated all sorts of things. Started taking over my parents' finances, and then her health continued to decline. And then my dad had a stroke, and so I was about 8 years. I stopped working. I was overseeing their care, raising my son, just sort of running around crazy. Um, and my dad had long-term care insurance. My mom couldn't get it, and there'd be times where she wouldn't have care because she was afraid of running out of money. And I just remember wanting to tear my hair out because she shouldn't have been by herself, wheelchair bound in a two-story house. It just was crazy, but she was really truly afraid of running out of money. And
Mhm.
so just seeing the different impacts of having it, not having it, and just the emotional impact of seeing your family members declining. And so I'm just I've dedicated myself to learning as much as I can about long-term care insurance and helping people learn about it and figure out if it's the right thing, because it might not be able to solve everything, but if I can solve a financial piece to give people choices and options and take some of the stress off, then I feel like I'm paying it forward somehow.
Yes. And
So
and and so along the lines of that is like you had that experience, that emotional experience, and kind of the leading up to like, and Jamie just touched upon that. And Jennifer, if you could introduce yourself and talk about, not recognizing these things about ourselves and the emotional state that we're in, so that we can, when we get too far down that road, we're not going to be able to make rational decisions because we're not calm. We're in crisis.
Yeah, it's true. And it's also in large part because of the perspective that we're holding and the language that we're using, I think, even as professionals, which is part of what I want to show up and contribute here. Um, and Jamie really started this out, I think, pretty powerfully with like, hey, we're entering these things and this is tough, right? And Suzanne and Jamie and I have had some interesting conversations around some of this together, right? A lot of it's really embedded in the way that we're even holding this and talking about this, which is what we're here to talk about today. So I'm Jennifer Love, and I am a career-long entrepreneur. I'm a wealth creator. I am a money therapist. I'm a financial advisor trained in and across psychology, relational intelligence, and financial planning. And so I don't replace the financial planner. I just understand that language and that world deeply. And so what people are, from my perspective, and what I see in working with folks, is what people are avoiding is not the planning. What they're avoiding, because they'll sit in a 2 hour meeting, review a 40-page document, and sign things they barely understand. The paperwork is not the obstacle. What they're avoiding is what the planning requires them to feel and admit. And that's
Mhm.
three things specifically. So, first, it's the mortality itself. Second, it's the family system. And third, it's the self. So, when we talk about the mortality, it's their own mortality or someone that they love. The moment that we open this conversation, the body knows, the nervous system goes online. And most people don't have the emotional fluency to be in that activation, so they exit and run away. Right? They reschedule. They
Mhm.
say they need to think about it, or they're stalling on the logistics, because what's actually happening is they're trying to regulate, but they don't really know how. The second is the family system. The end of life planning is surfacing every single unspoken dynamic in a family: favoritism, inequality, old ruptures, the sibling no one talks about, the second marriage, the estranged child. The paperwork is the easy part, honestly. The dynamics are not. So they avoid the paperwork to avoid the dynamics. And the third is the self, because to plan honestly, you have to declare what you valued, who you loved, what you regret, what you want to remember, like what you want to be remembered by. This is identity level work. And many people are not sure they have lived a life that they would be proud to summarize. So they postpone the summary. When your clients delay, they are not being irresponsible. They are protecting themselves from something they do not yet have the language for. And that's where I come in. That's my job. I help give them the language. I help them understand their identity around it. And planning really gets associated with loss instead of control or love. because of how we frame it, because of how the industry has been really, frankly, trained to frame it. We talk about long-term care planning as preparing for decline and death.
Mhm.
We talk about estate planning as what happens after you're gone. We talk about life insurance as a death benefit. The entire vocabulary is loss coded. Every word points toward what's being taken, not what's being protected and loved. So when a client hears, let's plan for long-term care, what their nervous system is processing is, let's plan for the day I lose my independence, my dignity, my body, and my mind. That's not a planning conversation. That's a grief conversation we have not named as one.
Mm.
Meanwhile, the same client will happily plan a wedding, a business exit, a sabbatical, because those are gain coded, right? We use the language of design, vision, possibility, but long-term care is also a design conversation. It is the design of how you want to be cared for, by whom, in what setting, with what dignity, funded how. It is the design of what your family will not have to fight about. It's the design of a love letter with legal weight. But we are selling it as loss prevention product. And then we wonder why people will not engage.
Mm.
The frame is not cosmetic, it's structural. Until we change the language, the avoidance is actually quite rational.
Yeah. Well, I just want to have like a cup of chamomile tea and spray lavender, and you tell me it's going to be okay, Jennifer. I just, I just, I want to go back to Jamie because Jamie said you're talking to organizations.
Mhm.
And so if you're talking to organizations, you're talking to a lot of employees, I'm assuming, and
Yeah.
and so you're meeting people at so many different stages, right? And so what are people opening up to about when they're talking about this? Like they're probably sharing because now you're creating a safe space for them. You're trying to give them education, but like what does that look like when it unfolds?
Well, there's a couple of things. First is they actually, people who you wouldn't expect will show up because it is a service that they themselves um, aren't willing to pay for because they're not in pain yet or perceived pain yet for it. But the minute that they start understanding what those potential triggers are, or like even the random, conversation with the coworker at at the lunch table about an issue they had with their parent, and they were able to recognize, oh, I'm dealing with that too. But it allows them to Jennifer's point earlier about it gives them some language to identify, oh, I'm already in it. And if I like, and it's not too late for me to figure out some
Mhm.
solutions, which is a helpful thing. And what I have found by working with corporations on this particular thing, when they bring me to their employees, those employees are much more likely to act because of the reframe that what Jennifer was talking about. So it's a helpful way to get to people earlier in the conversation by showing them and explaining them to them that they are already experiencing this, and getting ahead of it and understanding what's going to come next really puts them in the power seat as opposed to the, I don't know what's happening seat.
Mhm. And I think like with Suzanne, getting back to like we're kind of you have to kind of have those conversations with people where they're not necessarily in crisis, right? Because it's like the we're
Right.
planning ahead. And then but like how do they, you know, one of the things is cost, right? Because Jennifer says, we're putting but what are some of the misconceptions people have about the costs and why it is that they have to plan?
Oh gosh, there's so many. The biggest one I'd say is 50% of people think that Medicare is going to cover if they need any kind of care. That's a huge one. Another big one is that people assume, okay, long-term care is for end of life, or it is for the elderly, or it's for somebody who's bedridden and can't do anything. They don't realize it could be that you're, 40 years old, 45 years old, and you went skiing and you had an accident and broke your legs and you can't get around for a few months. And so you need to pay someone to help you. And it's just temporary. And it's just a way to have someone help you pay for something for 4 months so you don't have to pay it out of your pocket. So in addition, I love everything you're saying, Jennifer, as far as the language, and I want to talk to you more offline on that because it's brilliant. But I just think people think of it, they hear the words, they think nursing home. They don't realize, okay, well, if I put a plan in place now, I can decide when I want to have care, where I want to have care. I can have choices. I don't have to worry if the stock market's down. I know I've got this pool of money that's not dependent on the market, and it's just the freedom that it can give people, and to take the burden off of their family members. I just feel like there's so many positives about it. But like you said, Jennifer, so many people just they hear the words and they can't even process it because it just they're, it's a fight or flight or whatever it is in the body. The cortisol is probably off the charts. And they're just, I mean, when I even say that what I do, if I'm just not necessarily even trying to sell someone anything, if people ask me what I do and I tell them, you can see kind of a look of horror on their face, it's there's so much negative that's associated with. And when I see people in Facebook groups saying, I'm thinking about long-term care insurance, I mean, it's so polarizing. People think they assume, okay, well, because my parent had a policy that was terrible, it must all be evil and a scam. They don't know about newer options. They don't know how it actually works. And so there's just a lot of misinformation or maybe outdated information. And so I just, I don't know. I guess I look at it as, the amount of leverage you can get and the tax efficiency and the dollars. And I don't really think about the emotional part. I mean, I've been through it with the parents. And so I feel like I've already been through that, but I just get excited about, okay, I can give you $120,000 in day one. I've got over 500,000 and in 83, I got 1 million. And, if I need care, I kind of focus on the numbers and all the logistics of it. But I do know,
The gain that Jennifer said that
um,
you're focused on the gain.
I mean, it's just, I'd rather have somebody else pay for something for me. I'd rather save some of my assets and leave it to my son or leave it to a charity or not have to go through all my own money for my own care. But I don't know, people, I guess they can't even get to that point because they're blocking it to try to protect themselves. But meanwhile, it's kind of like I saw a video the other day. They were saying, so many people don't do the thing that's hard today. Like they're like, oh, well, I could either exercise today and do better later, or I could just do the easy thing and sit here on the couch. But then later I'll have a problem with my mobility because I didn't exercise. Like, right? It's like do the hard thing now. Think about, planning and putting things in place today so that it'll be better later. I don't know. That's just sort of my frame of mind, but I don't
Whatever
know
gets
that
them,
people think of it
whatever
that
gets them
way.
off the couch. So, Jennifer, why does planning get associated with loss instead of control of love and and showing whether it be self-love or love for your family or your future or your family's future, your legacy?
Well, I think so much of this, I'm going to come back to kind of the original question here, which is how's this conversation, like how do you open this conversation, right? Because then I'm going to tie that back to what you just asked me, Jessica. Um, so I think when we stop opening with the planning, like when we're talking with someone about this, when we stop opening with the planning and you open with the person instead, the conventional move is to walk in with the agenda, the long-term care, the estate, the life insurance, the advanced directives, and try to make it feel relevant. Like, because you care. Suzanne cares. Like, this industry
Mhm.
cares about the people. The
Mhm.
reason why these women are in this room with us, the reason why everyone is showing up to, what Mark has so brilliantly put together here is so that we can have this conversation because this is an industry of people who care
Mhm.
about helping people, right? And so we want to turn this and focus on the care first. I was listening, I think it was yesterday, in one of the summit conversations, and I was listening to a group of people talk about how the care has really been lost because the organizations have come in and kind of swallowed them up and bought up a lot of the long-term care homes and facilities and whatnot, and so it becomes like this line item on a budget agenda rather than centering the person. But here's what I'm going to tell you: every single time you center the person, the bottom line will take care of itself. And so if we try to make it feel relevant to a client's life, like that we're getting it backwards. The agenda is the destination, not the doorway. The doorway is a question that invites them into their own values, not into our service category. So it's something like, if you imagined the people that you love most a year after something happened to you, what would you want to be true for them? Not about the money, but about the way that they were treated, how they felt, what they had to deal with. The question does three things. It centers love, coming back to your question, Jessica, it centers love, not loss. And it puts the client in a future they can design, not a future they're afraid of. And if it gives them permission to talk about people, not paperwork, which is what they actually want to do. They want to talk about people. They want to talk about their values. They want to talk about what's important. They want to talk about possibility. Then this shifts for them. Then you stay quiet as a professional. Your job is to really listen, because they'll say something really real. And whatever they say is the doorway into every technical conversation that follows that you really want to have with them. The other shift is one most professionals miss, because we're trained to move toward resolution. Clients in this conversation do not want resolution first. They want to be witnessed first. So if you hold them 30 seconds of silence after and share something tender without rushing to fix or sell, you will have done far more for that engagement than any framework will. Engagement is not built through information. It is built through the experience of being met, seen, and heard. These are Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We know this. And so let me make this more concrete too. I worked with a couple, both in their 50s, both successful, both had been like meaning to get to it, to their planning for almost a decade. And you all know the story, right? We've been talking about these throughout this entire summit. Smart, capable people. They had attorneys, they had the advisors, they had multiple meetings, and nothing got finalized. And when we sat down, I did not ask them about their plan. I asked the husband what he was most afraid of, like what he was most afraid his wife would have to handle alone. And within a minute, he started crying. Not because his wife was fragile, but because no one had ever asked him. His advisor had asked him about asset titling. His attorney had asked about trustees. Nobody had asked him about her. And what came out was that he had watched his mother go through his father's death 20 years earlier, and the family had imploded over a poorly structured estate. He had been carrying that for 2 decades. He was not avoiding planning. He was avoiding repeating his father's mistake, and he did not trust himself to do it differently. Once that was named, once that was witnessed, once that was seen, once that was really heard, empathized with, the planning moved in 3 weeks. Long-term care funding decided, trust restructured, advance directives signed, the conversation with their adult children scheduled, done. What changed was not the information. They had the information for 10 years. What changed was the emotional architecture finally got addressed and the planning could land. That is what planning as love looks like in real life. It looks like asking the question underneath the question. It looks like recognizing that your client is not stuck on the what, they're stuck on the what it means. And until somebody helps them with that, no amount of expertise is going to move them forward. This is not soft work. This is the work that makes all the technical work actually finish.
Love that.
Deep, 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 deep. Thank you, Jennifer. Jamie, getting back to you speaking with people and organizations and having to have these conversations because from the leadership standpoint, from the operator standpoint, they want to address these things, right? They want to dig into their employees because this is going to impact like performance, retention, and burnout. I think there's hopefully we're going to turn a corner with HR and companies because we have to address this more. We are people, um, we have more, the aging population, we're aging longer, there's more longevity. And so of course it's going to impact our employment for not just all of these employees that have to also, they're taking care of they're in the sandwich generation, they're taking care of their own family members in their own households, and then they're caring for other family members, maybe afar. How do you see this impact with the organizations, and maybe this is why they're being, engaging you in the first place? And you're on mute.
Sorry. It's a hard shift back after Jennifer there. But I mean the organizations that are asking these questions and asking for help are, I mean, they're pretty progressive in their mindset, right? I mean, they're thinking about how else, there was a dear friend that worked for Amazon, and I remember one thing that he told me that was so important to them. It was to be obsessed with the customer. That was their kind of their bold statement. And I think companies that are obsessed with making sure their employees' needs are getting met will be the ones that are first to the party on this particular piece on addressing these answers or these questions, and these concerns that many of their employees are facing. That's number one. I think the other piece to this, and Jennifer talked about this a lot, is when you are dealing with a a caregiving situation, and if your relationship with the person that you're caring for is at any level of dysfunction, if that isn't addressed early on, there isn't, I mean, to both Suzanne's and Jennifer's point, there isn't any paperwork, meeting, whatever commitment that is going to be tremendously successful if that part of it isn't resolved. I mean, it is really at the underbelly of what we're dealing with is a tremendous amount of personal fear and anxiety about themselves aging and about the person that they, whether they have a complicated relationship with that person or uncomplicated relationship, it impacts their decision making. And so being able to have these conversations in a place that might feel, that was weird. Why am I talking about this at work? Is actually been helpful for them to kind of at least initially open themselves up to having that deeper conversation. But fundamentally, people have to really ask themselves. I loved how Jennifer framed that, is really, not starting off with here are the 10 things that we can accomplish today, but tell me a little bit more about why you might be feeling this way, right? What do you vision? What do you see? And that will unlock a lot of answers to getting you further along in whatever your goal is with that person. And so when I work with companies, I say that, like, let's overall look at EAP programs that you're already paying for that nobody uses. And are there
Mm.
ways for us to extrapolate tools that are in there that could benefit your employees that you don't even know are there, that they wouldn't even know how to utilize, to help with care, or there might be some solutions for mom and dad in there you didn't even know, like legal benefits, or if they pay for some legal fees. Sometimes there's some long-term care riders that some of the benefit packages have. There's all sorts of different things that companies could be doing, that would be easing some of the pressures on their employees, but they don't even have the language for it either.
Yeah. I mean, do you think that they're conducting their own studies? I mean, is this kind of why they engage you? Or is this just a benefit to the employees, or they're just concerned. They're genuinely concerned, and they want to make sure that their employees are taken care of.
It's honestly, they themselves are the ones that are in the same crisis, and when they call, it's really it's it's always from a very personal, maybe like, this would benefit me sort of situation. I haven't found a company that is open to it without them having the person, the decision maker, having the same issue in their life
Right, because they can
personally.
relate to it, because they can relate to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. So, Suzanne, what do you think, like just being like proactive, right? And just in initial in it, these initial conversations on touching on what somebody should be thinking about long term, and also, depending on like where they're coming to you, where they're starting at. Is this somebody that's young or have his family of their own? Are you talking to them about themselves, their parents? Where does it start? Like, where do they meet you, and how are you telling them to plan long term?
Yeah, it really depends. I mean, it's quite a range. I mean, typically what will happen is somebody goes through the caregiving situation with their parent and they realize, oh my gosh, I better do something about this. And so they seek me out because they've seen how much it costs. They've seen, either a parent who did have the long-term care insurance and really helped or one who didn't. So I would say the majority of the time when I'm working with people, it's because they came to me because they're seeking it out because they get the value and they understand it. So it's not a question of having to convince them about getting it. I mean, occasionally I'll be meeting people and I'll tell them what I do and they're curious and we'll have a talk and they don't usually, it's pretty rare that they'll actually, go forward with anything. They just want to learn about it. But sometimes I'm helping people's parents, you know, understanding the parents' policy, or maybe I don't really get into helping with claims a whole lot. Occasionally I will, but so it really varies. I mean, but ideally someone can come to me, let's say mid 40s, mid to late 40s, early 50s, early mid 50s, something like that, where they have a better chance of qualifying based on their health. And, hopefully they kind of know where they are financially to figure out what would be doable for them and what would work. So it's not a great answer to your question, but it's kind of really varies quite a lot. I mean, sometimes we'll have solutions that are kind of untraditional, that can maybe be like just helpful with taxes, but it's not really a great long-term care solution. But like for someone in their 80s, but that's not very common. But
Well, I think it's all the different perspectives. I mean, if they're coming to you, you're saying that the majority of the people have already been triggered because there's been some kind of event that's happened
uh-huh.
within their family circle. For Jamie, she's already known as an expert in, um, and has a very big presence. So, it wouldn't be hard to find her as a an expert, a subject expert, and then,
Mm-hmm.
and then when people are reaching out to her and then engaging them into the families. And for Jennifer, we know that people are kind of coming to her because they're trying to learn their own love language, in the relationship with money.
Uh-huh.
So there's a reason why people are coming to you guys. But for other people, that are here is like when people are, in that crisis, they're already in that crisis where, again, we hit that mass, that critical mass, like where this is, a hospitalization, something very, very, diagnosis and things like that. But
Mm-hmm.
as Jamie had said earlier, the crisis is like there's signs, there's things that are bubbling that are happening. So, just kicking it back to Jennifer is getting back to we can open people up, when we start to have the conversations. Like we know why there's a trustee, but we're really not getting down to the root of it all and what that's going to look like. But
Mm-hmm.
when we have total avoidance, Jennifer, like total avoidance, like how can we kind of crack it open?
Mm. Ye- Yeah. Well, let me answer that by giving some language that shuts people down immediately, not to use.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
Right? I think that might be helpful for everybody here. Right?
Yes.
Because often what shuts people down or the avoidance is because of the language that we're even using.
Mhm.
And so this might be something important to try. And so I'll be specific here because it matters. So using language like when you pass, like you're talking to the person, when you say when you pass, that shuts people down. Soft euphemisms like that register as discomfort in the body. They feel it physically before they even understand what's going on mentally or emotionally. The client knows that you're trying to manage their feelings, which means that the conversation cannot be honest. And another language term that shuts people down in the event of incapacity. Well, that shuts people down.
Yeah.
It is a legal language masquerading as care. It signals that we are protecting the firm, not the client. Um, and using language like your beneficiaries shuts people down because it abstracts the people they love into a category. No one has a beneficiary. They have a daughter, a husband, a brother they're not speaking to, right? Um, you need you need to shuts people down. It puts them on the defense immediately. Adults do not respond well to being told what they need to do, especially about their own death. It's just paperwork. It's not a big deal. That shuts people down because because they know it is a big deal. And they, now that you've told them like their reaction is wrong, well, that they're going to turn you off and probably not want to talk to you again. Um, let's get this handled shuts people down. It's the language of efficiency in a conversation that requires your presence. And the most common one, have you thought about what happens if something happens to you? That shuts people down. That sentence is doing three avoidant things at once. It is using if instead of when. It is using something twice to avoid naming what we mean. And it is putting the entire weight of a conversation on the client to do the work of being honest while we hide behind the softness. Ooh. The language we use is not neutral. It is either an invitation or it is a wall. Most of what's used in this industry is a wall. I
Hmm.
invite you to use invitations.
Hmm.
So
It's beautiful.
examples of that language. So like ways that you would word it better.
Correct. Yeah, what might be interesting, Jessica, is I could put together like a one sheet and we could send it over to anyone who wanted that.
Well, I mean, I don't like just to digress for a second, what we're going to do after the summit is go to all the people that signed up and registered and had watched or watched recordings or present in real time and ask them who they want to get introductions to or what information they want from the speakers. So we're definitely going to be do that. There'll be lots of follow-up after this. So that would be fantastic. Um, I did want to ask Jamie, and I'm going a little bit backwards here, is what are some of the signs that you're explaining to people that they should be maybe looking at reflecting themselves or for, their fellow employees or family members? Like, what are some signs that they should be looking for before we get into that critical mass crisis? Or we have to learn by collision?
Um, well, I mean, these are like when I meet with people, it's about kind of going over the five buckets of things that, every family should be aware of as you age to kind of avoid heading down that path. But I think there are things that people write off that seem very harmless, that they don't realize are signs of this is moving in a direction that I'm going to probably need to reevaluate my own schedule and day and life eventually, and it could happen much sooner than anyone expects. And so, um, it shows up a lot, I would say, around holidays, but it's a trigger for a couple of things. I mean, the holidays are triggers all the time. You see, all of the senior living data suggests that uh, you get more. Um, you get more referrals and walk-ins during holiday seasons and afterwards. Those are your biggest move-in times because families come home and they see that mom or they are visiting and they've noticed that, oh my gosh, mom or dad or they've really aged. Or they've walked into the house and they've noticed it's not all of the things that everyone here, they're all experts, they all know.
Mhm.
But there are those moments, like before you get to those moments, it's the other moments, like they're kind of the metadata that you ignore. So, um, more frequent trips to the doctor, maybe the change in routine, like if mom called every Sunday and then once missed it, like those are all things to maybe track. You want to like there are these little kind of pieces of things that you know your person or maybe you don't. I mean, that's a whole other conversation,
Mhm.
but those are all different ways for you to start recognizing that I'm probably on a journey that I that's not going to be it's not going to be fun. Falls are big indicators for a lot of things. Like falling is not normal. I actually was just talking to two people, they're brother and sister, both physicians, and they called me and they said, my dad, has been falling. He fell 3 times and we're so frustrated. We just want to move him in someplace. I'm like, well, okay, first of all, falling is not normal. I mean, these are two physicians. I mean, this is what
Mhm.
they do for a living, right? They're medical people. So we need to actually get him evaluated, right? That he's
That's,
like that
you
there's
need
not
to tell me.
something else going on. And they're like, oh, yeah. how do we do that? I mean, like, because but so my point is that you can be so aware in your other world, but when it's your family and your life, you don't take, you don't,
Mhm.
you don't always recognize it when it's happening to you. And that's why that boiling the frog analogy, which is kind of rough, but like, it's true. I mean, you don't know that it shifted until it's really shifted. And so, there's a sense of wanting to be really aware of your surroundings and your loved ones, kind of, to make sure you're checking in with them, that you're just subtly, if you're noticing things, like if you see something, say something, right? Like not point it
Right.
out, like, mom, you're getting old or whatever. I mean, to Jennifer's point, we probably need to figure out better terminology on how we address them. But I think we all have a responsibility to be more thoughtful about the people that we're eventually going to be responsible for. So I probably did not answer your question there. I'm not even sure if I even
No,
got
no,
around
no.
to it,
No,
but
I think it's like that was great because it's like true doctors don't recognize when somebody has to be evaluated. What kind of doctors are they? Are they like, what were they? Were they gynecologists? Like, why are
no,
they?
yeah, no, I mean, they're medical doctors that, have elderly, I mean, probably see older, I mean, many of them have older patients, but the point is, yes, it's just that, like, they don't apply their own knowledge in their own personal life. They forget it all.
Hmm.
I mean, it's just because it's so emotional to them that they
Hmm.
can't, um, they like all of that goes away, and they just need somebody else to help them process it. Because back to, I guess, I mean, I mean, she definitely is getting the gold star here, but yeah, and I just saw, Skip, the cobbler's kids with holes in the shoes, right? Or the dentist kid with, all of the cavities, right?
Right.
It's they can't apply it to themselves in that way. So, and
Hmm.
largely due to a lot of the things Jennifer probably shared. So,
Yeah, because it's that self-reflection. Suzanne, are you ever dealing with families or people that are coming in and they want to encourage somebody else? Like if somebody's not for themselves so much or their own planning, but they're trying to figure out how they can bring you into their or connect you to another family member that they're concerned about, or maybe it's a wife trying to encourage a husband. We really need to plan for this. Does that come into your radar?
It does. I mean, so much of the time, I wouldn't say always, but a lot of the time, the wife wants to get the long-term care insurance and the husband doesn't want to get it. And he says, we don't need that. Well, I wonder why you think that. Maybe because it's the women doing the care, not the men. I mean, it makes me want to just like strangle, but I can't. Luckily, it's on Zoom most of the time, so I can't physically strangle them. So it keeps me from causing trouble, but I get really upset because they don't get it. I mean, not saying that always is the case, but I mean, most of the time it's the daughters doing the care for everybody. And so that makes me really crazy because, it usually, like I was saying before, it usually takes someone having had some kind of exposure to either being a caregiver or knowing someone needing care to understand the gravity of it and understand why it's good to plan for. If someone's never had that exposure, or they don't, it's not real to them and they just don't seem to see the value in it. I've seen, scenarios of, parents getting coverage for children, or even sometimes the adult children getting policies on the parents if the parents don't have as much in the way of resources, but they're still healthy. The adult children, if they happen to be doing well, they could get policies for the parents. There are just a lot of different combinations and ways that it can be done. But looking out for people who, if someone's solo, a scenario with an elderly mother where the son is either living with her or doesn't have his own family, and so another brother is saying, well, let's get coverage for the son who doesn't have a family, anyone to care for him, because they want to make sure that he has someone to look out for him, being single, no kids, and so there's just a lot of different. Am I answering the question? It's just a lot of
Yeah,
different
of course. That's exactly what it is.
combinations.
It's because it's like, yes, you did answer that, one person wants and the other person doesn't. And so that's not you, a family coming to you or somebody, or you're trying to teach or educate somebody. This is
Uh-huh.
where somebody that's like, how do I use the language? They're coming to you and say, how do I use the language to explain to my husband or, my child,
Right.
whatever, how important this
Mm-hmm.
is. And, unless they don't have that connection, if they haven't seen it, if they haven't
Hmm.
witnessed it, I don't think it's kind of like, it's not like, this will never happen to me. It could be a lot of reasons why people think that they don't make a move. It comes down to avoidance, really. It's just avoidance. You don't want to think about it. You don't want to think about it for yourself. You don't want to think about it for others.
Right. The funniest thing I hear is sometimes people will say about wills as well as about long-term care, even life insurance. They're so superstitious that they think, oh, if I go get my will done, I'm going to die sooner. I mean, right? There's zero logic, but again, it's just the emotion or the wanting to avoid. Um, so a similar
Just
thing, like,
something, yeah,
right?
something to kick down the road, or they don't want to invest in it now. They don't want to invest in it ever, but it really is an investment in yourself and your legacy, really.
Well,
If
it's for
you,
it's for the people, other people. It's not for you. It's for people who would be forced to give up their careers and everything going on in their lives to care for you. Because I mean, if you're not going to let, if a parent doesn't have enough money to pay for care, you're not going to let them be there and not have care. So you're going to do whatever you have to do, whether that means leaving your job, if it means working plus caring for them. I mean, there's 63 million unpaid caregivers in this country, and there was ARP did a study, and they said if all of them were paid for their time, it would be something like $1 trillion. I mean, it's insane. And so many of these people are working. I mean, I was fortunate I was able to be able to, stay home when my parents were going through things, and I wasn't even physically doing the care. I was just overseeing it, but even that was really stressful.
oh yeah.
So had I been working and then also having to physically do the care, I probably would have been even more of a basket case than I already was. So
What do you think, Jennifer, what do you think, or any of you, what do you think that people think they have a handle on, but they don't?
Yeah, well, to pick this up off of the thread of Suzanne, because what she's talking about
Mm.
here, I think, is really key. That the conversation, it's the conversation with the people who actually have to execute the plan, right? And so she's talking about it's often the daughter, or so, but there's there's no consideration for that person because of what you're talking about, Jessica, the avoidance, right? And I see this constantly. The documents are signed, the trust is funded, the policy is in place, and the client has never had a real conversation with their spouse, their adult children, or their named trustee about what is in those documents and why. They've handled the legal architecture, maybe. They have not handled the relational one, which
Hmm.
means when the moment comes, and it will come, the people executing the plan are doing it cold, in grief, often in conflict with each other, trying to interpret intent from paperwork. And that is
mhm.
where families fracture, not in the planning, but in the execution of plans that were never spoken about out loud. And and so part of what I see as the invitation here too is right alongside of the financial or legal architecture is the human architecture, right? Because what if this shifted from a conversation about death and loss of all the things that they love to a conversation about a legacy being built as a family in a way that someone can be remembered beautifully? And
Hmm.
it can actually become something beautiful rather than filled with fear. And so if your client says they have it handled, ask them when the last time they walked their family through it. Most have not, ever.
Yeah, I spent even being in this industry and seeing so much, I don't want to say desensitized, but you do get conditioned because, you're dealing with people that are needed help all the time. And then the people that are, dying and die and it really doesn't really hit you until like it happens to you and a family member. Because I remember 20 years in the business and I lost a parent and when that was happening for me, I didn't know what to do. If anybody would know what to do, it would be me because I've been doing it for so long, but it just doesn't. But getting back to what Suzanne said about getting that person off the couch and tying it into what you said is like you have to do a little bit of the work now so that it'll be a lot easier for yourself later. Like you have to eat right, and you have to exercise, and you have to plan, and you have to do the architecture that you're talking about, so that it is going to be easier or more seamless later. Like we're all striving for that, but you have to be engaged. What do you what do you see gets in any case, like decisions that are missing over and over again? Like what do you see is the biggest missing link? Where do you see people get into crisis the most? Or
Jamie, maybe that's for you, I guess, to
Well,
start.
it depends, but it's either around well, definitely that issue of not the power of attorney not understanding what the wishes are.
Mhm.
That is very problematic, and all of the kids knowing whose job it is, that is a family dynamic that is all too common. The other one is really denial about brain change. I think that people are so terrified for themselves about any type of cognition change that they really avoid all signs of it. And the key to anyone living with dementia is that, really reframing that about what is retained and what is not lost. But we don't live in that world again. But early intervention and recognizing it and stating it early, you can actually really create an environment that's much better for everyone involved, by recognizing those earlier signs. But that is really, really hard for people because they don't personally, people are interested about dementia only because they don't want it themselves, and it terrifies them. It's a sign of their own mortality. It's all of those things that families don't act in time, or they act in a way that's irresponsible, and they say, "Oh, mom or dad just has dementia. We're just going to let them," and they do nothing that way either. They just write off the thing as it must be dementia or something. That is one of the bigger mistakes that I
Hmm.
see families getting into. But really, the alignment around care is very problematic for families that haven't had the difficult conversation. I wrote a book about this in 2022 during COVID, right after COVID. And that's really, people don't like having them and naming the thing. And that's all wrapped up into it. So if my parents aren't telling me and my sister exactly what they want, and they give all authority to the both of us, and we don't get along, what kind of good decision making is going to happen there, right? Zero.
Mm.
Or I give one daughter power of attorney for healthcare and one for
Yep.
finance, and they don't get along. So do you think they're gonna like, and the decision is like, we need to pay for this for mom, and the person who's in the healthcare power of attorney says this to the person in the finance, like, nope, I'm not, I'm well in the power of a financial, I'm not paying for that. These conversations are sadly way more common than people think.
Mhm.
And so having that conversation, like having that conversation early on with the people who are responsible for your care and explaining to them, this is what I want, has to happen. You have to have that conversation with
Mhm.
your loved ones, or else you can almost guarantee that your wishes will not be fulfilled.
I
Boom.
Jamie, I saw that all the time. And we brought it up on a call, I think yesterday. And in my family, my dad's like, well, you girls better get along I'm like, we don't get along now. Like,
Yeah.
why are you doing this to us? Like, what do you think's going to happen? Like, all of
Yeah.
a sudden, we're going to magically get along the second you're gone.
Right.
Like, I mean, like, it doesn't work like that. So I do think that's like, thank you for sharing that because it couldn't be more true. I would get calls all the time and I'd be talking to like, well, my sister, I go, and I would be like, who has durable power of attorney? Like I need to talk to the decision maker because I can see where this is going. Most people don't, after 20 something years of talking to people that are in crisis, I lived on the periphery of that, right? Because they're like calling for home care and things like that. And they just it was always the same. Like they're always experiencing this for the first time, every time. And you'd be amazed. I've talked to thousands of families, and most of them are pretty okay when they get on the phone, like, because, oh, somebody told me to call you, and this is just where I'm supposed to be going because there's somebody's leading them down the track. The people that cry, and there's a lot of sad situations, really heartbreaking. But the people that cry were the unstable ones and the siblings that were fighting with each other. That was when it was like out of control. So I hear you.
Yeah, can I, that's a good segue. I
Yeah.
was just going to say, I'm an only child, but I know so many people have issues with siblings where one person does everything, the others don't do anything, or, and if you don't have plans in place, that only makes things that much worse when it comes time for someone to need care. And then there's, you know, it falling on one person and then the resentment. And, as a parent, I think most parents, I mean, I have an only child also, so I don't know again what it is to have multiple children, but I'm guessing if you have multiple children, you want them to get along. And if you want them to get along and you think that that's going to happen by you ignoring the planning, um, forget that. I mean, the more you can do to put things in place in a way that's going to make it harmonious as best as it can. You can't promise it'll work, but at least making
Mhm.
the attempt, I feel like is a smart idea because it's really bad to be in the scenario where, being the sibling who does everything and then somebody else is just off living their best life. And it's it's not a fun feeling for people I know, what I've heard.
No. Jennifer, what do you think, and maybe a message to the professionals here that are, helping families and helping their own families. What is one thing that you think that you talked about a couple of different things, but what's something they should start saying differently
Mm.
or framing differently?
Everything, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, certainly there's language, right? But I think so much of it is turning to a center of really not being afraid to sit in the discomfort of someone else's emotionality, um, and being willing to invite them into the hard conversations, but also the framing of, hey, this doesn't have to feel so fearful. This can actually be a celebration. Um, and I think of this, I think culturally we've lost a bit of this. If we think of one of the cultures that I would say is one of the greatest legacy makers of all time, we could look at the Zapotec, which, not Aztec, but Zapotec down in Mexico. It's a tribe who are so loving, so family centered, and they remember their ancestors. They literally have that time of year where they welcome their ancestors from the dead back, right?
Hmm.
And so they give those who are aging and moving along, they give them a place to be celebrated, to be welcomed. And I think that's part of what's going on, and to some degree, is that, think about it, as a human, what is one of our greatest fears? It's to be forgotten.
Mhm.
And so if we can give people a place to really be remembered and how they want to be remembered, from a place of not death and like treated as a transaction, but as a person, and centering them and their needs in it, it changes everything.
Hmm. Your love language changes everything. I'm kind of like you could be like the Jessica Whisperer, I feel like. I'll do anything you tell me to do, Jennifer. It's so calming for me. And just so chock full of information. I really appreciate it. Is there anything else that you guys want to share or anything that like you would see or anything that you've seen really last couple of years have been so tough for so many reasons? But changes in society, we're kind of still recovering from COVID still and things like that. But anything that you'd like to leave the audience with?
Who wants to go? Jamie, you want to go first? Go mute.
Sorry, I
Unmute.
Oh.
kept doing that because I didn't want to have my
Yeah.
my screen go, but I guess I would just I mean, these are all professionals. I mean, so we're
Yeah.
not talking about anything that they don't know. I mean, I think I just want to say thank you to everyone who does this work every day, and really trying to continue to have the conversation with the people in your communities and your network. And bringing this to the center of conversation in general because it's an important one. So grateful to be aligned with incredible leaders doing this work, and thankful to Mark and Jessica for putting
Yeah.
this on. And
Yes.
and Suzanne and Jennifer for allowing me to join their panel. So those are my final thoughts.
Thank you. We're gonna start the next session. Thank you guys so much. I really, really, really appreciate this. This is wonderful. We're gonna see Brian DeVore, and he's got a new show on senior spaces, and we're gonna show the audience that. Thank you guys very, very much. We really appreciate you guys.
Thank
Bye.
you for having us. Bye.